Are you a leader, manager, entrepreneur, business owner, or knowledge worker? Are you leading people or wondering how to be a better leader in your own life and work? If you are, then you can be experimenting better. Welcome to The Experimental Leader, a podcast that takes a look at the ways leaders are experimenting in their own work. Hosted by Melanie Parrish, we dive into real-life conversations about how people might be using a scientist's mindset and experimenting in their work. Shift your leadership into something that works better. Join us on The Experimental Leader today.
Hey everybody, I'm Melanie Parrish. It's so great to be here live with you today. And I just want to invite you to take a deep breath. It is just such a busy time of year. I know we're all hoping for a little more sleep soon as time zones change. And it's just so nice to take a minute and to be present. So I want to invite you to be fully present with me. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to tour with my son, the University of Waterloo. And it was a fascinating day for me. Mostly it was all about him because he's thinking about going to university there in software engineering or computer science or systems design. That got opened up as we were there. And I was really taken by a few things. And one of them was just how new this school is. They first opened in 1959. And so they were just issuing degrees just a few years before I was born. And the fact that it's such a new university, on the tour, we found out a lot of the professors got their PhDs there and came there in around 1980. And they got their degrees and then they just stayed on. And so it feels fresh and new, and the buildings are all contemporary, which is really interesting. Some of the buildings are really new, like 2017, and shiny and exciting. We had the opportunity to meet with a friend of ours who is the Terrence Stewart, who's faculty there, and he's with the National Research Council of Canada, and he's a research officer there, and he does amazing work with robotics and brains and using brains for efficiency. And we got to just walk around and look at different robotics labs and talk to him about how they were using robotics to try to work like humans. And it was just an amazing opportunity. And what I realized is that college tours, university tours, are Gemba walks. You go on a tour because you want to see what it feels like on the ground. And you want to see what's happening there that you can't read about in a brochure. You can't hear about it from someone else. And so we were able to do that. And the feel of the University of Waterloo is it's so tech driven, because so many people are doing tech degrees. There's a train that runs through campus that takes people mostly to shopping malls and takes them places, but everything is really designed to connect underground or across the sky. And there's a feel, people where the culture is so palpable when you're there. So it was a fascinating sort of study of culture and energy. And it was really interesting to see, as well as sort of the joy that I get when I rub up against, actual scientists who are doing real live laboratory experimentation, which brings me great joy. And I'm super excited about our guest today. Her name is Sinead Sharkey Steenson, and she is the career elevator coach at Generation Women. And she helps women get promotions and the pay rises that they deserve. She's passionate about equality and seeing more women in leadership. And she blends practical strategies with simple mindset tools to achieve amazing results. And several of them have gotten over 100% pay raises and multiple promotions. And to date, she's helped over 10,000 women take a step up. She draws on 20 years experience in HR, and I am super excited to have her on my program. Welcome to the show, Sinead.
Oh, thank you very much, Melanie. It's a delight to be here.
Oh, it's so fun to have you here. Well, we are doing book club today, and I wanted to start by reading a passage. And I know that you also have a lean manufacturing background. So I picked a passage for you. And so I'll just read it and then we'll chat about it a little bit.
Perfect.
And this is from we're doing book club. So if you want to join along, we're on chapter 1 for the month of October, and we'll be moving to chapter 2 in November. And we are looking at the climate of innovation. And I'm reading on page 15. The phrase lean manufacturing entered our language in 1988 with John Castick's article, Triumph of the Lean Production System. Lean manufacturing originally referred to internal practices at Toyota as it steadily eliminated waste from its factories for profitability and success through continuous improvement. In North America, we began by trying to integrate Toyota's best practices into factory work. But over time, we learned that Japanese methods were more useful for continuous improvements. In Japan, there's something called Shushin Koyo, which translates to lifetime employment or lifetime commitment. Japanese employees expect that they will work hard and stay with a firm for life. Because of this commitment to lifetime employment, Japanese companies always believe they need to improve their systems instead of replacing their people. North American companies have adopted many Japanese ideas of continuous improvement that set the stage for innovation, including 3 that we will explore later in this book. Kata, a practice of questioning and thinking for improvement. Gemba walks, walking the factory floor to see the actual processes. And Kanban, boards that track work. But culturally, we're far from adopting Shushin Koyo as an integral concept. To frame experimentation, it may be useful for you temporarily to think of your people as permanent. It will help you focus on your processes and on universal improvements. Yeah. Any thoughts on all of that?
So, as you said, I do have a background in lean manufacturing. So one of the many hats I've worn in my career was a very fancy title of Lean Six Sigma Master Change Agent. And so I would have worked in the factory and across a large engineering organization, coaching leaders to implement improvements. And we used all of the tools you've mentioned. But I really love the concept of the Gemba walk, because as a leader, it's so easy to become detached from what's really happening, think you know what the answer is, to jump into making improvements. And the Gemba walk's all about go and see. We actually used to call it a go see what's really happening. Look at the processes, look at the data, look at how the people are interacting with that, and then you can really make a difference. And I think when leaders often start out and take a big step up, you can feel a pressure to make change and to live up to the new salary you've got and to perform. And actually taking that time to do a Gemba walk, to spend time looking at what's happening. And they also have, I can't remember what the term is, I think where you just stand and watch things for 30 days. You're not allowed to make any change. And I just think that's really smart, because change you make before you understand things is going to be useless at the end up, and you're only going to ruffle a lot of feathers.
Well, it's such an interesting concept. And I think, the Gemba Walk at Toyota was on the factory floor. And it was the idea that the boss sits up on high in the factory, and they're going to come down out of that box, and they're going to, watch what happens really get into it and see what's happening on the floor. But in knowledge work, often when I'm working with clients, and I'm sure it happens with you too, it's like, well, how do you do a Gemba Walk if you're talking about software development? Or how do you do a Gemba Walk if you're talking about a knowledge worker, a therapist, accountant? Like, how do you actually, and I'll say, go sit next to them. They're literally doing work somewhere. Go sit with them and ask them questions while they work. Like, it's okay. Don't be so distant. Don't be so far away. It doesn't have to be a remote looking, like, actually go sit with them and talk to them about what they're doing, how they're thinking about their work. And because knowledge work, we often think about that being over there somewhere, and not like getting our hands in it together. And I think it's really powerful. And I love your idea too of waiting 30 days. When I first moved into my house, I was so excited. I moved into a 2-acre property with lots of gardens. And boy, did I feel like I better get a handle on the gardening and the weeding and the whatever. And then 3 years after I moved in, I had baby twins. And so my weeding really went downhill for a couple of years. And I was amazed to find that some of the plants that I had diligently weeded for 3 years were actually beautiful perennials that started to flower after I stopped weeding them so diligently.
I think that may be the best metaphor for leadership I've ever heard.
I know. It's like, oh my gosh, it was a rose of Sharon, actually, that I had flipped off. I think
we could just end it there. So stop overweeding, leave your people alone, and see what they can do without you getting too involved.
Overweeded. Yeah, don't overweed your people. Let them flourish. Yes. So I think I love the idea of seeing what people can do on their own. And make sure you give them a little water or food or whatever they need.
Because when you start a role, people are already tense about what it is you might do and come in and change. They're expecting you to be critical and to make change. And so taking that time to observe and to ask brilliant questions and be interested and understand. And if you can, one of the great things I learned as well from that background was the whole principle of the 8 wastes. So understanding, over processing things, but one of the greatest wastes is people's intellect. And actually the people that are there and have been there for a while may not have been listened to in a long time. And there's a whole lot of knowledge and expertise that you can tap into. And if you can help them fix some of the things that they've been struggling with, then you're going to build a brilliant relationship for the future. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for just having a little chat about the book. It's near and dear to my heart, obviously, and I love the concepts that are there. I always find it so interesting when I start to talk about all the Japanese concepts, from Toyota.
it's always the Gemba walk that any consultant or coach loves. I think it's the most powerful concept. It's always the one that people who work with people find to be powerful. So for those of you who have someone in your organization struggling, I really want to give you a challenge to go to where the work is being done and watch the work. That's the concept of the Gemba walk. You can read about it in my book. You can read about it in lots of books. You can read about it in the Toyota Kata book as well. But the Gemba walk, you can read about it on Wikipedia. Google Gemba walk, Gemba, and read about Gemba walks, and then start to do Gemba walks with your people. Watch the work as they do it. Whatever it is that you're doing, don't just talk about it. Start to watch the work. I meet with my assistant almost daily, my tech person, and I watch her work. She shows me stuff. We meet sometimes for 5 minutes and she shows me stuff. It has improved the level of the work we do in my organization a millionfold. Like it changed everything when we started doing that. So my challenge to you is to look for where you can start to do some Gemba walks in your organization this week. So Sinead, what are you experimenting with in your life and work right now?
Oh, that's a good question. So I constantly experiment with my programs and how can I have the most impact for the women that I work with. So I like to innovate and try different ways of working so that I work with very busy women. I know that probably any of us coaches that work with leaders work with busy people. And so it's finding ways that I can work with them that are impactful, that go with them on their journey and help them make transition and transformation along the way. And so I experiment in how I build the programs, in the tools that I use, and how I interact with people. So one of my I launched a program last year, an Impactful Leadership Mastermind, and it brings together a great mindset program with masterminding sessions where we get to problem solve, and master classes where they get to learn new skills. And it's all very interactive in the moment. And we build an amazing network of women and support, and that way we get to see a massive amount of transformation in the 6 months that we work together.
And I know that you're working with women who are trying to sort of make the leap into the C-suite. If you had a couple of tips for someone who is, at what point, maybe this is the first question, is at what point in someone's career should they start thinking about the C-suite?
Well, as early as possible, really. So I work with women at different levels. And so I like to help women accelerate their careers and progress. And I think what can happen, certainly I've been doing lots of sessions in big organizations lately, and they have a tendency to only see the next step. And so I encourage women to step back and think about what's the impact you really want to have, and how do you want to change things? Because so I did a session last week in a global bank, and there was a level of frustration, like in a lot of big organizations, that they weren't being heard, and there's a culture of high levels of hours worked and that kind of thing. And so my challenge was, what are you doing about it? How are you getting involved? How are you going to influence that? And they were like, oh, I don't think I can work to that level. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you? If not, who? And who's going to change things for the better if it's not you? And so I would encourage you to be thinking big from the early days and thinking about how am I building good relationships, building my network, plugging my gaps, getting the experience so that you're ready when the time comes. And then obviously as you get into more senior levels of management, it's having great conversations with leaders above you and in other organizations to understand what is it that I need to be focused on and working on and building my strengths in so that I can get out there and have that impact and influence. And as women, I find we have to play the game a lot so that we can change it. Because if we try and rail against, I disagree with this completely, but it's very hard to rail against things before you have the power and the influence to make the change, unless you all band together, which we are seeing happening a lot more. And I'm 100% behind that. But do try and step up so that you can change the game for the people that come behind you.
What do you think are the things that people do that get in the way of being promotable?
The number one thing is, and this may be controversial, but it isn't really, is I think a lot, and I say this a lot with women, is spending way too much time doing a great job and not enough time talking about it and thinking about their career and spending time on career. So of course it's important to perform and to do well. But if nobody sees it, then you're never going to get anywhere. And so there can be this culture and focus on busy work and taking everything on and not setting boundaries and not taking the time to highlight what it is you do and think more strategically about what am I doing to help myself be seen, to get myself to the next level. And so I see a lot of busyness, a lot of hard work, and not enough shining your light and saying, excuse me, I deserve recognition for this over here.
How do you think people can say I need how do you say I need recognition?
So the key is to talk a lot about the results and impact that you're having. And so it's not about being, because women are judged differently as well. It's easier for a man to say, hey, look at me, I did this. Not that they do, well, some do. But it's easier. A woman has to tread the boards a little more carefully. Again, I don't agree with this. But we do have to be conscious of bias and how we are judged and how we are measured differently. Things are changing. And so it's about always being prepared for a meeting, to have something to say, to do an update, and to talk about the results and impact that you're having. Talk about the strengths that you've used. And so whether it's talking about, how we were having that problem, well, what I've done is, and highlight what you've done, show your strengths, shine a light on it. And so the impact for us as a team or as a business is that now we can, and I've saved this much money and, whatever it is, but you're making it very clear what it is you've done, the impact you've had, the results that you've got. And it's not about, denying the efforts of the team, but it's knowing when to say we and knowing when to say I. And I think women have a much greater tendency, because we've been trained to say we rather than I.
That's great. Where can people find you, Sinead?
Everywhere. So the best place, my favorite place to hang out is definitely LinkedIn. So Sinead Sharkey Steenson on LinkedIn, and I also have a company page, Generation Women. I'm on YouTube and Facebook, but definitely LinkedIn is my favorite spot, and it's easy to reach out, to send me a direct message. And I love people that connect, message, introduce themselves, ask for my help. start a conversation, whatever it may be. And the good thing about, if you're a leader, you should be on LinkedIn. You should be using that to highlight what you do, as well as what the company is doing. So when you reflect well on the company, you also reflect well on yourself.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a joy to get to talk with you. And I love these ideas about how women can show up and, make themselves more visible. It's powerful stuff. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you for having me, Melanie, and congratulations on the book. I really enjoyed it. So I would encourage people to go out and get it.
Thank you.
If you'd like to get a digital copy of my book, The Experimental Leader, Be a New Kind of Boss to Cultivate an Organization of Innovators, you can go to www.book.experimentalleader.com and you can get your very own copy for just $4.95. I want this book in your hands, so I've made it really cost effective so that you can start reading it right away. Go now so you can get started today and start to systematically improve your own leadership.
Well, it was great to be here with you today. I have loved talking about Gemba walks and women in leadership. I really challenge you to think about where you want to learn more about the people that you're supervising, about the world that you want to see more of, and go there and look at what's happening on the ground. Do your own Gemba walk. Figure out what it is you want to learn about and go look. Dive in. Find out what you can see. It's all there waiting for you. And I encourage you to go learn as much as you can and go experiment.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Experimental Leader. We hope you have found value in today's episode because we're dedicated to helping you become the experimental leader you want to be. To access the show notes or learn more about working with Melanie, visit melanieparish.com. Go experiment.